Hey everyone, what we're looking at here is lecture material on how to organize a comparison slash contrast essay. Um, for the most part, when someone asks you to write a comparison essay, they're asking you to look at what's similar and what's different. Sometimes you won't see it written comparison slash contrast, you'll just see comparison. That's what it means. Obviously, if you've chosen a topic where everything is the same, then there's not much point to the essay, to the activity. Most of what you're going to be asked to compare in every class that you take, you're going to be doing some sort of comparison. You're looking for usually things that are different about the two topics you're being assigned. So I'm just going to scroll through this document to the end and then I'll come back to the beginning again. So what you have here is an introduction to what a comparison contrast is and what you're being asked to do. I give you a comparison written in a very poor way, a way that doesn't work very well, and then I discuss that example for you and tell you some of the things you shouldn't do. Then the rest of this document is divided between two really effective strategies, the side-by-side strategy, and as I go through you can see I have it annotated in different colors so you know what I'm looking for here, and a discussion of what I've done, and then an effective point-by-point strategy. These are the two different strategies you're going to practice this week, and they really have nothing to do with your big writing assignment 5 for this time around. It's just an activity to work on comparison. And this should be a little easier for you than if we were just starting comparison early in the semester, because you've already done evaluation, and that's sort of a similar kind of thing. And then a discussion of that point by point. So let me try to make you dizzy here by scrolling up very quickly. Some of the things that you need to pay attention to when you're doing a comparison is to make sure you're talking about the same things for both topics. Let me see if I have the instructions up here for the week 12. Here, I do have them up. Okay, so I've got this here. The week 12 activity 1 and activity 2 is almost identical. So I've given you a group of topics for this activity. I've kind of done this for you since you're not actually writing an essay on it. All you're doing is writing an outline. So I didn't think you would mind using my topics. So I'm asking you to compare one of these following groups, and these are all cultural sort of topics. For example, the foods of two cultures, or the marriage rituals of two cultures. And what I've done is given you an example of each one, and please don't use my examples necessarily. Think of your own. But when we're asking you to compare, and I'm using the arbitrary number of 3. You could have 14 points of comparison depending on what your assignment is, or you could have 2 points. It doesn't matter. I'm just doing an arbitrary 3 so that you have a lot of information to put in your outline. I'm asking you to compare, for example, two musicians from two different genres. So in my example I have here comparing a country star and a reggae star. So maybe I'm comparing, oh gosh, can I even think of a country star? I don't know any of the contemporary ones. Maybe Johnny Cash and Bob Marley. Okay, so that's my country star and my reggae star. In what way am I comparing them? All right, so let's go back to this other document. And you'll see that as I scroll down to this first strategy, side-by-side strategy, I'm comparing city and country. Well, here replace city with Bob Marley and country with um, um, Johnny Cash. And you're seeing I'm comparing the same things for each topic. So in my country musician and reggae musician, what items could I compare for the two of them? Well, I might compare topics that they sing about. I might compare instruments that they use. I might compare the way they dress, their fan base, how they perform, where they perform, all of those sorts of things. Each one of those would be an item of comparison. So I can't talk about, with Johnny Cash, I wouldn't have type of music, or let's see, type of instruments used, and subject matter of songs for Johnny Cash, and then for Bob Marley, the fan base and where they perform. That's 4 different elements, 2 for Johnny Cash, 2 for Bob Marley, but I'm not talking about the same elements for both sides of my comparison. That's not really comparison. I can't, as a reader, make a decision about the 2 if I have different comparative elements on each side. So what you're going to be asked to do is to do first for activity 1 a side-by-side comparison, and then for activity 2 a point-by-point comparison. So some of the things you need to pay attention to is that it is not appropriate to have one half of your paper about Johnny Cash and one half of your paper about Bob Marley. That makes it difficult for the reader to see the comparison because they keep having to go back and forth, look back up to the first half of the essay to compare things with the second half of the area. That's very clunky. We see that a lot. We see students set up these comparisons this way all the time, and that's difficult. Another thing we see students do is have one paragraph on things that are alike, one paragraph on things that are different, and then some kind of throwaway paragraph at the end. We're not looking for that either. No one's ever going to ask you to write a comparison like that. What we want to see is you systematically have topics of comparison and go through your essay and each one of those topics in its own paragraph. All right. So in my my really throwaway topic here, comparing living in the city to living in the country. Okay. Boring topic, but it works for our purposes. So I have a thesis statement in my introduction. Here's my thesis. Living in the city is preferable to living in the country. All right, that's my thesis statement. If I wanted to, I could include this plan of development. Some of you might have been asked to do this in the past, plan of development in blue there. You do not have to do that. Plan of development actually says what are the 3 things I'm going to talk about, or the 4 things, or the 14 points. What am I talking about in the paper? So the entertainment options, that's 1 paragraph. The variety of cultural events, that's 2 paragraphs. And the quality of schools, that's 3 paragraphs. Makes the city a better choice for many families. So I've taken a stand in comparing the 2. I think living in the city is better for these 3 reasons. This plan of development, these 3 ideas, do not have to appear in your introduction. If they do, that's fine, but they do not have to. Okay? Even if your high school teacher told you you had to do that, she was wrong. All right, just saying. In my first body paragraph, I'm going to talk about entertainment options. All right, maybe the 2 things I want to talk about are restaurants and movies. Half my paragraph is on the city, half my paragraph is on the country. In the first paragraph, half of the paragraph, I'm talking about restaurants in the city. In the second half, in the second part of that half, okay, let me not confuse you. In the first half of that paragraph, I'm only focusing on city, the restaurants in the city and the movies in the cities. The second half of that paragraph is on the country, the restaurants in the country, the movies in the country. If this were a big research paper, I could have 2 paragraphs, or I could have 4 paragraphs, right? Just depending on how much room I need. You're just doing an outline, you can put them together in 1 paragraph. The second topic I want to talk about, comparing the city and country, are cultural events. I compare museums and music in the city with museum and musics in the country. You starting to see how this works? In each paragraph, I need a topic sentence before I begin comparing. So my first topic sentence with my entertainment paragraph might be one area, okay, right here, one area that is important to families when selecting a place to live are the entertainment options. All right. My second body paragraph is on cultural events. Access to cultural events is also very important, and I've showed you in brown here, these are transitions, also one area, okay, you need those transitions. My third body paragraph will be about education, the difference between education in the city and country. I'm going to look at size and course offerings as my 2 topics there. Here's my topic sentence. The most important criteria for choosing between living in the city or country is it should be criterion, excuse me, I'll fix that, is the quality of the schools. All right, so each time I have some sort of transition to get you from paragraph to paragraph. When we come down to, and then I've got a discussion that you can read through and see, get some more details. When I come down to the point-by-point strategy, my introduction will be the same, my thesis, plan of development if I want to do one, all of that's the same. What's going to be different is the arrangement. All right. And what you can see here is the same topic sentence. Everything's the same except for the arrangement of the information within the paragraph. And in a really long research paper that's all comparative, you might want to mix it up. You might want some paragraphs to be side by side and some point by point, right? So you're not boring your reader. But in general, if it's a small paper, you probably would just stick to one of these organizational strategies or the other. You probably wouldn't mix and match them. But it's not against the law, right? You can, but just in general, people tend to stick to one or the other for a short piece of writing, but for a longer one, they might want to mix them up. So here's my first body paragraph in my point-by-point organization. Same information, city and country, restaurants and movies. Up here, I had for my side-by-side, here's my entertainment options paragraph. Half paragraph was on city, half was on country. All right. Compare that with the point by point down here. Here's my entertainment options paragraph, where I have, I'm going to talk about restaurants first in the city and in the country, and then I'm going to talk movies in the city and the country. Cultural events, the same cultural events as I talked about in my side-by-side, museums and music, but I'm going to talk about museums. What are the city's museums like? What are the country's museums like? When I finish that, I'm going to move on to music. What's music like in the city? What's music like in the country? And of course, in the final paragraph, the same thing. Education, what's important about education is size and course offerings. I want to look at size. What's the size of classrooms like in the city? What's the size of classrooms in the country? What kind of course offerings do I have in the city? What kind of course offerings I have in the country? So you want to review this document carefully, look at the outlines, and then look at the discussion for each. What you're going to do a little different is instead of just using the words city, country, museum, music, I want to see these written out as sentences in your outlines. All right. So that is it for this particular tutorial.